Yep. As soon as I find it.
We live. Come on in, y'all. Come on in, y'all. Come on.
Okay, we got people waiting.
Mm-hmm. You all see this video to our intro.
Hey, everybody, come on in. It's the Hood Table. Come on in. Hey, Keto-licious. Make sure you guys like the video and share the stream out.
Come on, y'all. Come on in.
We're about to have a very important discussion tonight, and we have a special guest with us. So make sure y'all say hello to the special guest, Shelia, who is a licensed clinical social worker. We're going to be discussing sexual trafficking and sexual abuse within the African American community. So make sure you guys hit the like button and share the live out, please. And thank you. And get ready for another live at the Hood Table.
You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable. Hop on YouTube, welcome to the Hood Table. Where we chop up locally, globally, locally. You don't really want to miss out on these conversations. Just joke a little, laugh a little, get that wine in your system, fill your glass a little. Expose current events, talk trash a little. You never know, these opinions might clash a little. Get addicted to the content, got them binge watching. You don't like it, think you want invited. Bet your friends watching in the house and your job parking lot before you clocking. They don't want to miss a second of this HD content. Everybody think they got something to say, so it's an open invitation, bring it to the table. But if you come whack, just know we ain't buying in. We gon' probably turn you back and tell you sorry, try again. Yeah, welcome to the Hood Table. You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable. Yeah, welcome to the Hood Table. You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable.
Hey everybody. Come on in. Hey, Maurice. Hey, Keto-licious. Feel free to comment in the chat, you guys. We want you guys to be interactive with us tonight because we're going to have a very interactive conversation with our special guest. As I said earlier today, we are going to have the phone lines open. The phone number is across the screen. So at the end of our show, Shelia is going to be available to answer any questions that you may have, whether you write them in the chat or whether you want to call in and speak directly to her. So we're going to give you guys that opportunity at the end. So that's why the phone number is up there. Again, hit the like button and share the live out. Thank you very much. And also make sure you subscribe to the Hood Table channel and hit the notification bell so you can catch all of our lives when we go live. And we have my co-host again. You guys know her.
Karma Diva in the house. Hey.
Yes, Karma Diva in the house. And again, our special guest this evening is Shelia Kirksey.
I am proud to introduce and have her on the show with us. This is not only is she a wonderful clinical psychologist / social worker. This is also family. She's also an Omaha native, so give it up to her, y'all. And let's begin this wonderful lesson. Something that I hope everybody can take something from and spread this information out.
Exactly. Again, tonight, you guys, we are going to be discussing sexual trafficking and also sexual abuse within the African American community. And Shelia, I would like you to start off first by telling us a little bit about your background. We let them, the only thing we really let them know was your title, and that you're a native of Omaha, Nebraska. So go ahead.
Hello, I'm Shelia. Thanks for the warm introduction. Again, I am an Omaha native, so it's good to be able to talk on a platform or a forum where we can kind of educate the community and spread information about a topic that is very rampant in all of our communities. As Keisha stated, or Keonti, I'm sorry, stated, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have my bachelor's and master's from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I've been in the field, 15 plus years now. Most of my work has been on the mental health arena. And most recently, I've kind of dived a little deeper into assisting victims of sex trafficking, specifically child sex victims of sex trafficking. I'm currently serving as a clinical director of a local foster care and adoption agency here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we're actually in the process of ramping up a specific emergency shelter and local foster homes to service youth that have been sex trafficked. We're accepting kids that are in child protective services as well as kids that are coming directly from the community. So we're kind of that front line to assist these youth that have gone through very traumatic situations. Wow. I was first introduced to this narrative, I will say, when I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. And let's just put this out there. Trafficking isn't something new. This is something that has been going on for decades. It's just that the narrative around the topic has recently been redefined when you talk about the legalities behind it and how the government and how local communities are viewing it and how they are addressing the problem. So it's nothing new. It's something we're all familiar with. I just don't think people pay enough attention to understand the dynamics behind it. Right. So I first was kind of introduced to the topic while living in Atlanta because at the time, I believe Atlanta was number 2 on the list for the most populated areas that experienced child sex trafficking. Wow. And a lot of that was connected to Jackson Hartfield International Airport there because it was, a way to push people in and out. Oh, wow. That's when I first was kind of introduced to it, working in state government, just kind of serving on different committees that were gearing up different community initiatives, different services to try to assist this topic. And then recently, like I said, when I relocated to Dallas about 1.5 years ago, I was fortunate to land a position that kind of put me even deeper into the trenches in helping the youth that have experienced these type of situations. So that's where I currently am.
Oh, wow. Thank you for giving us that information, that background.
Thank you for doing what you're doing to help these victims.
Yeah, I had no idea that Atlanta was that high up on the radar.
So at the time, that was probably mid-2000s. At that time, 2005, 2006, at that time it was number 2 on the list. I don't know where they rank right now, but I know that Dallas is currently, well, I shouldn't say Dallas, I should say Texas is number 2 on the list in regards to trafficking, as far as trafficking victims. And that includes—
Why is that? Why is it Texas? Do you think it's because of where it's located?
That does play into it, especially when you're looking at the corridors that cross through Texas. When you're talking about I-10, I-20, those major corridors that don't really have like any checkpoints or things of that nature. So it's an easy way to go in and out. And Texas is just a large state, so a larger state.
Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Texas is right behind California currently in regards to the number of trafficking victims, and that includes labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking.
Okay, so basically labor trafficking, like slave free, is that what you're saying? Like
pretty much.
Trafficking in general is being coined modern day slavery. Mm-hmm. When you break down the subcategories of trafficking, you have labor trafficking victims where you have individuals that are working. Some may be working for free, some may be working for, way below minimum wage. They may be working just to keep a roof over their head, like indentured servants, if you will. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different things that you can put into that category. And then, of course, you have sex trafficking, where anybody under the age of 18, and I put that out there, you kind of have to check your local state laws in regards to the age of consent. But the federal law talks about any youth under the age of 18 that are engaged in any type of sexual act with an adult could be deemed as sex trafficking.
Okay.
See, that's something I did not know. That there's the age limit.
Yeah, the federal government defines it as under the age of 18.
Okay. And one thing I had wanted to ask was, now that you mentioned that as far as the different type of trafficking, what is the most common trafficking? Like, is it children? Is it teenagers? Is it female? Is it male? And how do they generally go about recruiting? I don't know if I want to call it recruiting victims.
It's recruiting.
They just go out and just grab people. Do they groom people? Do they get to know people to get them to trust them, or how?
Right.
Okay, that's a very loaded question. So I'm gonna try to answer it.
Okay. You take it all.
So remind me if I leave out a piece of what you asked.
Okay.
So start off recruiting. I'm gonna go at the tail end of your question and work my way back.
Okay.
Recruiting happens in various ways. A lot of what you will see in the media, when you talk about the videos or people saying that people were kidnapped or somebody attempted to kidnap me. I mean, we all saw the video that went viral of the young lady in Houston that talked about, she was in an Uber, et cetera, and she felt like somebody was trying to kidnap her. Mm-hmm. Yes, it can happen that way. I think the biggest misconception is that is the only way that trafficking victims are recruited into the lifestyle that they're kidnapped.
Yeah.
While that can happen, and while you should be vigilant about being aware of your surroundings and getting into Ubers or Lyfts and things of that nature, that is not the largest influence or instances that individuals are recruited into the lifestyle. Okay. Kidnapping can occur, but I would say that that's probably less than 10% of how victims are involved in the lifestyle.
That's a small percentage. I didn't know that small.
When you start to talk about the number of victims, that is going to vary. It's a very fluid number because this is something where people don't readily identify as victims. Mm-hmm. They don't really realize that they're being victimized because this lifestyle is very normalized based off of their experiences. Okay. They won't come to you and say, "Hey, I'm a victim." In most situations, some will. But in more times than not, they don't even realize that they're being victimized or that they're being exploited. Okay. So that's something to pay attention to. And I highlight that because that's where I say the number is very fluid when you're trying to narrow down the demographics of, is it men, women, children, especially by race, socioeconomic status. That's a very fluid number. So it's hard to kind of nail down. Okay. What we do know is that in regards to trafficking victims, child sex trafficking victims, it's more focused on young females. We do know that there are male victims, but again, they don't readily come forward and say, "Hey, that I've been victimized." It's no different when you're talking about sexual abuse, and we know that men or boys are sexually abused, mm-hmm. but they're not very vocal or coming forward to report that. It's underreported. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you would have to kind of research your state's numbers to see what is available, but for the larger part, especially in regards to child sex trafficking, we know that there are higher instances with females. Okay. Specifically teenage victims. They're saying the average age right now for entry into trafficking is between 12 and 14.
Wow.
Yeah. Through various trainings that I have participated in and through different certifications that I've received in regards to trafficking and providing education, the youngest victim that I am aware of was 9 months.
Oh, that breaks my heart. 9 months.
But in that instance, that was a familial trafficking situation. And when I say familial, meaning that trafficking was occurring, that pimp or that trafficker was a family member. Oh, that you may not. It's hidden in plain sight, especially in those familial situations. If you have a family member that is trafficking a child, nephew, grandchild, whatever the relationship may be, mm-hmm. that's easier. It's very covert because you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's happening behind the closed doors. If a child is born into this type of household or into this type of family dynamic, it's very normalized for them. So they wouldn't know any different to say, "Hey, somebody's doing something wrong with me."
So
that's kind of like grooming, huh?
How do you identify, or how can you tell what's going on with this victim or this person?
It's various ways. I can't give you just one definite way to say, "Hey, that's how to identify a victim." Mm-hmm. There are different red flags or signs that you should be aware of. Okay. If you see a teen, let's just say, give you an example. If you see a teenage female aged 12 or 13 and they're coming home with flashy gifts, the newest Jordans, extra money, all these cell phones, where are you getting this from?
Right.
Who's supporting that? Because that is a grooming tactic that is used by a pimp or a trafficker to try to recruit. They're going to lavish you with gifts. "I can buy you things. I can get you everything that you want that your family's not buying you. I'll mm-hmm. take care of you." That's a sign if you're seeing somebody, a teenager or a younger teenager specifically, that has certain gifts or certain clothing or just items that you know that they don't have the monetary means to attain, but they're getting it from somewhere, that's a red flag. Multiple cell phones, phone calls from people, you know, random strangers. Let's see, lewd activity on the internet. Maybe they're posting promiscuous pictures. That doesn't always mean that they're being trafficked, but that could be a sign that, hey, something's off.
Yeah.
If you see a younger male or female that is with, let's say you see a 12 or 13-year-old girl and they're identifying, you know, this 30-year-old man as that's my man, that's my boyfriend, that's a red flag. I mean, what's going on here? So it's different ways. Some of the youth that are really heavily in the game may have certain brands. The pimps or traffickers may stamp them certain tattoos that you may notice. Unexplained multiple pregnancies, recurring STIs or STDs, a 12-year-old that is constantly with some type of STD or STI. That's a red flag. I can go on and on, but those are just some of the signs that are red flags that you should be aware of.
Okay. Well, thank you for providing us that information. A lot of that can be very, very helpful in trying to determine if somebody's in danger or being trafficked. One of the other questions that I had was, where do most traffickers keep their victims? Like hotels, homes, warehouses? Like, do they have like a specific place that they, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're asking. Okay. Again, that will vary. Some youth, you know, they may have like a trap house or a home where the pimp keeps everybody, you know. It could be a youth that is living at home with their parents and is being trafficked, but they just know the routine schedule. They could still be going to school. They're still coming home at a decent time. But those activities, let's say they're supposed to be participating in some type of extracurricular activity after school, or maybe they're skipping school during the day, and that's where they're being trafficked, but they're still going home just so that they're not tipping off the parent. This is it's hidden in plain sight. Okay. It could be now when you say hotels, they could be holed up in hotels. I've heard of numerous cases where pimps or traffickers have nonverbal agreements, or I should say not nonverbal, but not written contracts with hotels where they are renting out a certain number of rooms. They're paying a little side fee to the front desk to say, hey, I got people coming in and out of this back door. They're just coming directly to this room. So that's where the exploitation is occurring, where this youth is, being assaulted or raped in certain hotels. So that activity could be going on as well. But just to say this is where they keep them or this is where they're housing them is gonna change. Right. It can happen in different forms or different ways. There's no one way to say that's where they hold them.
Okay. So what can we do to help someone that we suspect is being trafficked or abused? What can we as just moms or everyday people, what can we do?
I think the biggest thing is just educating. Educating your children, educating your community, families, just people that you come in contact with about what trafficking is. It's not just about somebody kidnapping you and having to take you across state lines or somebody's flying you out of the country. You don't have to go a mile to be trafficked. So just really understanding what it is important. If you see a victim that you suspect is being trafficked, I don't necessarily encourage you to approach them, especially if the trafficker is right there, because it could turn into a dangerous situation. And again, you need to be vigilant about your own safety. But I would encourage you, if you could, tip off law enforcement or let somebody, authority figure, know that, hey, something is suspicious here. Get as many details or descriptors that you can and give that to the authorities.
Okay.
But if you suspect it with a family member or, somebody that you're a guardian of, you need to talk to them.
So in most of the cases that you've seen or you've read about, who are these traffickers? Are they strangers? Are they people these kids know, or just somebody in the neighborhood? Who are they?
And what are the funds usually? Like I know some people might do stuff like that for like drugs or money. Like what normally? Well, I wouldn't say normally because it could be several different things. But like the funds for these they make off of these victims, what do they like? Are they normally hire up people who do this kind of stuff every day? We're probably asking loaded questions again.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember all the components because this is all very helpful, and you guys need to know the answers to this. It's the point of this forum.
Okay.
So, let me start off by saying the most recent study that was done by the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, which came out in 2018, the most recent report, trafficking as a whole was a $99 billion industry.
Wow. That's a lot.
This isn't petty cash we're talking about. Worldwide. Billion.
Wow.
$99 billion industry worldwide. So I'm not talking about $20 here or little memes that you see about $40 here and there. It's very lucrative.
Wow.
And it's very rampant in all of our communities. When you say who are these people, who are these traffickers, who are these pimps, they're people that you know. It's not like it's some boogeyman that's hiding behind this Wizard of Oz that is pulling these strings and telling people what to do. These are people that you know. I guarantee you that all three of us, and even the people that are tuning in, we know somebody who is pimping a teenager or a young child or trafficking a youth.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat just said pastors, doctors, pimps, teachers, neighbors.
It's people that you know. Now, the average demographic of a John or a Trick, the person that is paying for these young youth to do this, that demographic for most Johns or Tricks are identified as affluent white males making at least $50,000 a year. So the buyers, the people that are buying sex, they're more affluent. Now, it could be anybody, but the average demographic are white males making at least $50,000 a year.
Now, what is the attraction to these kids? What?
I mean, it's a variety of things on that I can't tap into because that particular in my role, I have to know what my biases are. So working with predators or perpetrators of sexual abuse, that's just a category that I can't tap into because I'm not empathetic with it. So I can't really get into the psychology behind why they do it. But most, they're looking for a thrill. And it's about when you're talking about trafficking and sexual abuse, because let's be clear, child sex trafficking is sexual abuse.
Right.
That motivation is always about power and control. Whether you're talking about trafficking or sexual abuse, the motivation behind that is always power and control. You are in control. You have power over somebody that is vulnerable to you. You have some type of authority over them. So that feeds into why a buyer would go buy sex from a child.
It's just sad and sick that you don't see this as somebody's child. This is a child.
Yeah.
Whether it's your child or your neighbor's child, it's a child.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, children have been abused for probably from the beginning of time. And it was probably just done, as just people just want to do it. But then as the years progressed, they realized how many people are interested in the same thing their nasty minds are. They figured they can make a profit, whether it's porn. Like I read today somewhere where they said porn and sex trafficking is the new drug. These days. It's the new drug. So do you feel like that's correct or that's pretty?
Well, when you're talking about the porn industry, it could be a gateway into trafficking. So you kind of have to look at it that way. I guess going back into the conversation about the psyche of what makes people want to buy sex from a child, it's along the same lines of why would anybody sexually abuse a child?
Right.
It's something going on within you. It's some type of sexual urge that you cannot control. or that you don't care to control. And again, it falls back into that imbalance of power and control. You are able to control somebody that can't defend themselves against you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think along those lines in regards to this is sexual abuse, and that is the motivation behind it. That it's the power and control dynamic.
Okay.
You guys asked so many components. I'm trying to make sure that I'm addressing them all. When you talk about who are these victims and how do they get involved with this?
Right.
I know statistically for the state of Texas, for most child sex trafficking victims, 88% are involved in the foster care arena.
I can believe that.
Or have touched it in some type of capacity. So you're talking about kids who have been physically abused, neglected, sexually abused. They don't have strong family ties. They don't have a strong support system. Mm-hmm. So therefore you're very vulnerable. You don't really have people that you can trust or turn to, or the people that you have been placed in the care of, they've broken your trust, or maybe they victimized you as well.
Right.
And so when you're searching for some type of void of, I just want somebody to love me, and then you have this pimp or this trafficker that approaches this child, mm-hmm. They're buying you things. I can give you a place to stay. You don't have to worry about CPS or Child Protective Services anymore. You can come stay with me. That's enticing. They're telling you you're beautiful. They're telling you that they love you. It only takes a minute or two, and they're easy to spot. These victims are very easy to spot. So that whole grooming aspect happens that way. Okay. So then when exploitation occurs, they're slowly being introduced to various sex acts. Maybe they're showing them porn. Maybe they're showing them different sexual acts, people having sex in front of them once they are kind of hanging out with this trafficker a little bit more. And that's trying to desensitize them. So when the exploitation occurs, they won't be as afraid.
Right.
They won't resist it because you've been shown these acts. This has been introduced to you. Mm-hmm. So when the exploitation actually occurs, it's under the pretenses, I've given you a place to stay. I've brought you all of these gifts. I brought you in off the streets. I've shown you love. I'm the only person that loves you. You're going to do this.
Okay.
So you have to think along those lines.
One thing I wanted to ask was kind of like just regular without the purchasing and selling, like regular abuse of children. I know in a lot of cases, people prefer the children's young, and then once they get a certain age, they kind of discard them. Is that the same, or do you know if that's kind of the same in sexual trafficking? I'm sorry. Like in regular child abuse, mm-hmm. Some people, after a child is a certain age, they kind of discard them. Is that kind of the same as sexual trafficking? Do they kind of discard them once they get so old, or do they keep hold to them until they grow into adult age and just, put them
It varies. In some cases, they're going to keep them as long as possible because it's a low overhead. Mm-hmm. When we talk about the big business of trafficking, and I'm telling you it's making $99 billion worldwide, think about this along business lines. These pimps and traffickers are very intelligent. Mm-hmm. They have business models for how they're conducting themselves. And so when you're looking at, as long as there is a demand, then the supply is going to be there, correct? We know that it's a business. Mm-hmm. And so the Johns aren't going anywhere. The buyers aren't going anywhere. So your supply is readily available when you see all of these youth that are vulnerable and you have access to them. So think about it along the terms of, if you're selling dope, you got to re-up, right?
Right.
Once your supply is gone, you got to re-up, you got to spend money. But when you're trafficking a victim, you don't have to re-up. There's no overhead for that. You can use this person over and over and over again, and you're not spending any money on them. So that's how they're making all of this money. So as long as they can keep a hold on these victims, they're going to keep them as long as possible. And even if one does resist, or they do get away, or somebody does rescue them, they're just going to go grab another one.
Wow.
So that's how it goes. But in most cases, and excuse my language, but the terms that you hear for those that have been in the game longer, most traffickers or pimps have a bottom bitch. Mm-hmm. And that's person that kind of helps them recruit,
Mm-hmm.
keep everybody else in line. You know, kind of the madam, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there was a study that was done by DePaul University back in 2012, I believe, that did a study on how victims then turn into victimizers.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that most individuals that were involved in sex trafficking or that were a victim, they then graduate to become either a madam or a pimp.
Right.
And for some individuals, then once they cross that threshold of being the age of 18, that's when the law looks at it as you are now prostituting yourself.
Right. And that's kind of like with the regular child abuse as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them who get abused and or beaten, grow up and turn into the perpetrator, the predator.
Hurt people.
Yeah, it's a cycle. When you look at it, the cycle of trafficking, it is direct correlation to the cycle of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
You have the grooming, you have the tension building, you have the exploitation, and then you have the honeymoon phase. It's the exact same cycle.
Wow. And I bet it looks really glamorous from them as the victims looking on the outside at the people who are the pimps. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they see all this flashy stuff, houses, cars, jewelry,
somebody taking care of you, somebody telling you that you're beautiful, that they love you, that they'll take care of you.
Yeah, but the thing that has changed in regards to pimps or traffickers, you no longer see these individuals walking around like what we saw as Don Juan back in the day.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's still out there, but that's not the larger percentage of these pimps and traffickers. They look just like you and I. They look just like your brothers, your uncles. They plain clothing. You never would guess.
Wow.
Different races, various socioeconomic status, different career fields. You know, Keontae, I think I sent you an article a few weeks ago when we had that conversation about the pastors in Ohio. It was pastors that had a sex trafficking ring going on.
I did a commentary on that about a year ago.
That was just blew my mind to see that you hear about, stuff happening, especially like in the Black church and Black families. You hear about a pastor maybe messing around with a little 14-year-old girl in the congregation and she ends up pregnant. Mm-hmm. Or, you hear about, just somebody in it, Uncle so-and-so done touch that girl. Don't let them kids over there by them.
Yeah.
Back to that.
Yeah, growing up, we had a choir director who was trying to sleep with all the girls in the choir, and he was grown and they were teenagers. So it happens a lot. I mean, you always hear the stereotype as far as churches. Oh, it's these white churches, it's the priests, it's the altar boys and all this, but nobody really talks about the Black community and what's going on in these Black churches, because a lot of sexual abuse is going on in our Black churches. And it has these pastors that we are funding their homes and their extravagant lifestyles, and they are abusing a lot of our children. So,
well, I guess that's a good segue to talk about the other half of what this conversation is supposed to be about, as far as sexual abuse in the Black community.
You're right.
There are a lot of stereotypes and a lot of myths that we need to address within the Black community. How are we educating the young men and women to view sexuality, to view gender, to view each other, and what is a healthy sexual relationship? What does it mean if somebody is touching you inappropriately or just saying things to you that are inappropriate? Too often we are teaching that it's that creepy man in the white van that you need to run from, or make sure that, you tell me if you see anybody messing with you.
Right.
But you got to stop the conversation at limiting that conversation to this is only happening by strangers. Yeah. Because in most instances of sexual abuse is by a known person, somebody that is familiar with the victim, somebody that has access to the victim. So that could be family members, it could be teachers, it could be clergymen, your pastors, the people that you trust that have access. So changing that narrative and having a conversation about if anybody says anything to you inappropriate. If anybody wants to touch you inappropriately, you let them know, versus saying don't talk to strangers, and limiting it to people that you don't know, because that is creating a false sense of safety for some of these kids.
Right. And that's how it used to be back in the day when we were real young. Don't talk to strangers, run, stop, stranger danger. And it's like in your own family.
Yeah, it could. And Keisha, when Keontae, I'm sorry, when you make the comment about, we all have those jokes about, Uncle Bobo, don't leave them kids in there. He ain't right, this and that. Well, if Uncle Bobo ain't right, why is he in your house at all?
Thank you. That is a problem that I have in my channel, my subscribers. I have mentioned it several times. Everybody who, and this comes from the sweeping it under the rug in our communities, and the predator, the molester, abuser is always over at the holidays, family reunion, birthdays, cookout, and these children that's been abused have to see their face,
and they're getting victimized over and over.
Yeah, because it's swept under the rug, like you said. If they done something, why do we keep allowing them?
Yeah,
and that leads to my next question. I'm sorry, that leads to my next question. Like, what is the main reason why you think family members like me? I'm that mama bear who, we doing something. We going to the police. If I don't take care of myself first, it's gonna be a heat of the moment situation. I'm saying that live right now. But a lot of households sweep that under the rug. Why is it so many families are willing to protect?
I don't let me
the perpetrators.
The perpetrator over the children.
Let me say this real quick. Sometimes they don't want to necessarily hand it over to the law, because the law may say, okay, well, you've reached the statute of limitations, or it didn't fit this criteria, so we can't prosecute. Whereas you tell cousin so and so and uncle blah blah blah, and they gonna handle it. And they go whoop on him, and
that's it.
And that's it.
They beat him up, and they like, the situation's handled. But to me, that's like, okay, so that means he ain't gonna do it no more, or somebody else is dead.
I think there are multiple variables as to why that occurs, from my professional opinion. I think one of the things that we have to talk about is that there is a long-standing mistrust between the African American community and the justice system. We can all agree to that. And so if you know that turning over a member of your family who is brown or black, if you know that they're going to be further victimized once you turn them over to the legal system, there's still that sense of we have to protect our own.
Right.
Not saying that it's right, not saying that I agree with it, but I do think that is a mentality within our community, that we're not going to turn over one of our own to a system that has continuously victimized us for generations. That's one variable. Something else to consider is that there is, as a parent, as a caretaker, if it is brought to your attention that, okay, so-and-so has abused my child, you would feel some sense of responsibility that you failed as a parent. Maybe you didn't protect them. It's going to be some type of negative reflection on you. So to avoid that, I'm going to handle this in-house. We're going to get so-and-so to take care of it, and it's handled. But we all know that doesn't resolve it, because the perpetrator just moves on to the next victim. Another variable to consider, generational cycles where sexual abuse is rampant throughout families, where grandma was abused, grandpa was abused, auntie was abused, mama was abused, and it's just a generational cycle that continues itself. And so in that instance where it is sexual abuse is very normalized, or it could be an incestuous situation, nobody is going to intervene because it's not going to be known outside of that family dynamic.
Like, have you seen or heard on the Unsung about Next, the group Next? The two brothers, Tweety and the Heavyset, when they were brothers, their mom was sexually abused by her dad. And then supposedly their sister and one of them were products of the dad. And they didn't find this out until their sister had passed away.
Wow. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah,
no, I didn't know about that.
You have
but
to just
it's those type of situations where sexual abuse is a generational cycle and that it repeats itself. And if nobody within that family unit is aware or is willing to intervene, then the cycle is going to continue itself.
Yeah,
we've talked about how sexual abuse, sex trafficking is a direct correlation with the domestic abuse cycle. And so if, just for the sake of conversation, if you have a female that is with a man the man is sexually abusing the child, but the man is the predominant breadwinner taking care of that household, if they turn that person over to law enforcement, then how are we going to thrive? How are we going to survive? Now, from the outside looking in, we know that there are means, there are ways.
Exactly.
But when you're in that situation, some people don't think that way. This is our caretaker. Or if I let the police know, then again, how is that going to reflect on me? Are they going to take my kids away? Are they going to do something to, harm me? Am I going to be, any charges going to be pressed against me? So there's different dynamics that play into it.
And a lot of that happened back in the day when a lot of women were housewives. They didn't have any college. They didn't have any work skills, and things would go on, and that would be like the main thing that they would focus on. They would be scared to talk to the husband or even report him because it's like, what am I going to do if he goes to jail? Where are we going to live? We're going to lose our house and have to move into the projects or get on Section 8 or food stamps or welfare or, things like that. And we have to consider our kids more than our lifestyle. I would literally go live on the streets or in a shelter. I like, for real, before I be like, oh, okay, I got to get this big old grand house up in these cars.
I don't give a damn about the house. I don't give. My kids are, and you, Shelia, you know how we were raised. Our kids are number one. Period.
Yeah.
Without a.
And I think another stereotype when you're talking about when you're talking about child sex trafficking and sexual abuse within the Black community, within the African American community, as a community, we have to step away from these stereotypes that are assigned to boys and girls, to the youth that are coming up. We got to back away from automatically assuming because a young girl made a mistake and maybe she did engage with an adult, she's still a child. So the responsibility, the onus should not be put on that child. The onus is on that adult not to victimize that young girl. Back away from these stereotypes of saying, oh, she was just fast. We got to stop blaming the victim.
Right.
Along the same lines, back away from this false sense of masculinity, of putting notches on a young man's belt, the more women that he has.
Right.
To get away from that whole discussion, because what is that reinforcing into young men's psyche that, oh, I'm bigger than the more women that I have, a notch or some type of badge of honor. Again, it goes into that conversation of what are healthy sexual relationships, what are healthy relationships, how should you treat a man, how should you treat a woman, just mutual conversations that show respect for both sexes.
Right. That's a great point because I didn't even think of it that way, but yeah.
Okay, well, I did something I would ask you. I know, and my kids can testify, that I done told them till I was blue, purple, black, white, in the face. If somebody even looks like they're going to touch you, whether it's a coach, preacher, the mailman, brother, sister, uncle, dad, it don't matter, to come and tell me, because I will do something and I will take action. A lot of the cases as far as within our family in the African American and outside of African Americans, but it happens in our African American community. Well, children do not tell their parents. And what do you think we need to do differently, because we can tell them, oh, well, even if they say they'll kill you, or they'll say they'll kill your mom, or burn your house down, or steal your dog, you know, a lot of kids still don't speak up. So what do you think we can do differently with our children?
I think, to me, I think is being vigilant and continuing to have that conversation with your kids.
And I do all
and
the time.
letting them know.
Yeah. I think it's even that.
I believe you, and you know, you come and tell me, come say something to me, and if you don't trust me, trust some
a teacher,
some adult.
Another parent. Like my kids are 22 and 18, they boys. And I swear on my mom in heaven, I still ask them sometimes, have anything ever happened to you when you were younger? And they still look at me the same way they did when they was young. Mom, we would tell you. You know, but I still sometimes when I see these stories, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and coming out, you know, sexual abuse, I don't know. Sometimes I'll be like, anybody, did a coach ever, remember when y'all used to go to the barbecues all the time? Did something ever happen? No, Mom, but some kids, they just...
Yeah. You know, the main thing is keeping that line of communication open. Try to know their whereabouts. I mean, sometimes kids are going to be kids, you know, especially teenagers. They're going to try to sneak around or, you know, say they're going to the mall, but really they're going over a friend's house. Be mindful of the things that you did as a teenager. We weren't
all she did. Because I was a saint.
Look, wait a minute, she was with me.
But keeping that line of communication open, educating them on the topics that we're having now. This conversation that we're having, you should be having it with your kids, educating them on what the dangers are that are looming out there. And I think the main thing, if you have a child that comes to you and tells you, hey, such and such happened, that first, when they disclose some type of sexual abuse or something inappropriate or somebody attempting to exploit them, that first response is going to determine the trajectory of how the outlook is going to be for them going forward. So if a kid is coming to you telling you, hey, something happened, believe them. Believe them and act on it.
Ask questions later.
Yes, don't just dismiss it. Don't discredit it. Don't confront them and make them feel like they were in the wrong, or, you know, the correcting can come later. But if somebody has exploited them or victimized them, believe it and address it and be supportive. Hear them out. You know, too often if a young girl came and said, hey, such and such did this to me, or they tried to, you know, he tried to rape me or he did rape me, too often, well, what was you doing there? Why'd you go with him? What'd you have on? All of that can come later. That's not important, because
I ain't asking no questions.
If it was an adult,
my key and my purse, and we out the door.
If it was an adult in that situation, the onus and that responsibility is on the adult not to victimize a child.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and Keonta, we had this conversation a few weeks ago. Nothing burns me more to hear, oh, that girl was just being fast. She got what she had coming to her.
Yeah.
No child can turn on an adult who wasn't already attracted to kids.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Right. The responsibility is not on a 13 or 14-year-old to tell some 30-year-old man, oh, don't hurt me or don't do it. It shouldn't happen.
Right.
Exactly.
And if you're in a situation where you don't feel, you know, empowered to speak up, or you're afraid, or you're being threatened, what do you expect a 13-year-old kid to do in that situation?
Right.
True.
Do what you have to do to survive, and then
be supportive, you know, listen, hear them out. You know, like I said, that correcting can come. It'll come eventually, but that immediate conversation is not the time for the victim blaming and why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? Because they're going to shut down.
Yeah. Automatically call the police, call the authority. You know, I feel you on that, because a lot of times the victim might be a promiscuous teenager who might dress scantily, or, you know, their parent might think they, you know, always flirtatious or provocative.
You know, but
that don't give nobody a reason.
That attraction has nothing to actually do with the victim.
A grown-up knows better.
Yeah, the onus and responsibility is on that adult.
Right.
And if you have a teen that is being promiscuous or dressing a certain way, that's the part where you can educate them or find out what happened along that line, what happened in that lifeline to kind of perpetuate these things. What are your influences? Why are you feeling like this is what you need to do? That all reflects on self-esteem, self-worth, how you look at your self-image. Those are things that you can educate on, but it still is not a welcome for, hey, rape me, assault me because I'm dressed a certain way.
Right.
Now I have a question. Now we are keeping it on to adults. What about children who abuse other children, or they, or like you said, they may be the enticer to bring them in to trafficking?
That is a very gray area that most states are really struggling with. Because like I said, traffickers will use certain victims or people, young girls that they are working with to help them go recruit others. But that's that gray area where you were a victim, but now you're a victimizer. And that's a gray area. And really that kind of boils down to the legalities behind it, because technically they're both minors, but some could be charged with a crime if they are, involved in the trafficking or the harm of another youth.
Right.
That is a very gray area. And that's a struggle for many agencies. Like I said, we're in the process of ramping up a program that we're building, an emergency shelter for trafficking victims.
Mm-hmm.
But for some of our community partners who are already active, that is a concern when you think that you're offering services to somebody who needs help, which they do need help, but essentially they're coming in and they're recruiting people and they're cleaning out your whole agency.
Right.
Running away with other youth. So that's something that, ongoing education, and you never know when they are actually coming in to get help versus they're coming in to recruit other kids.
Right.
It's a hard balance. It's just the nature of the field that, something we'll have to figure out along the way.
Yeah, I can see that.
But one thing I do want to stress, two things I want to point out that I don't think that we've talked about. When you're talking about child sex trafficking, it does not require a third-party entity to be deemed a trafficking situation.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you have, let's say that you have a 16-year-old who has their own website set up where Johns can contact them or buyers can contact them, who are soliciting themselves, that is still considered trafficking because it is an adult exploiting a child under the age of 18. You do not have to have a trafficker or a pimp involved in order for it to be a trafficking situation if you have a youth under the age of 18 that is engaging in sexual acts with an adult.
I would have never have thought about that. Yeah. I would have never have considered that trafficking.
That's trafficking. Yeah.
And what's that one site that people sell a lot of stuff on? Not Backpage. Craigslist. That a lot of that goes on a Craigslist. It'll just be regular girls who putting things on, the Craigslist, looking for a good time, or they don't just say exactly what it is, but they give hints, and people will call or meet them. See, I would have never considered that trafficking.
That's trafficking. You do not. A third party is not required for it to be legally defined a trafficking situation. It is not required. The other thing that, by default, when we have these type of conversations, I automatically default to say young girls or the victims are females, but don't dismiss the fact that there are male victims who are here. It is just significantly underreported.
Yes.
And one of the largest gateways for young boys to be recruited into trafficking are the gaming systems. When they are playing these games with the headphones and they're locked away in the rooms for hours, you don't know who they're communicating with on the other end of that game.
See, and I have to do that with my son. He's 17, but I still, I kung fu chop that though. I bust in. I'm like, what you doing? Who you talking to?
And that's my 18-year-old. My 18-year-old.
You talking to any adults on there? Everybody trying to get you to come?
That is a very easy way for traffickers to recruit young boys through the game. And it's very subtle. They don't even really realize the nature of the conversation and what that's leading to. They don't just come out and say, hey, I'm going to come pick you up on the corner and I'm going to go, make this money off of you to have sex and blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. It's a very subtle you don't even realize that it's happening. You know, it may start off with we're talking about the game, or that we're going to play on a ritual every Monday at 7. This is our game time, and then slowly the conversation may lead into, hey, have you ever had sex before? You got any girlfriends? Just very casual conversation, and based off of how they respond, how that youth will respond, that's going to determine what the next question will be and how far that conversation is going to go. It's very subtle, very intuitive.
That's another SVU. That's another subtle way of grooming. My son, he's 18 now, the youngest one, but he plays live video games, and sometimes he's playing with people he don't necessarily know in person. And I didn't allow him to do that until he turned 18. Like before that, it was just all his friends, from school or whatever. But still, then I would tell him, you never know who you're playing with. It could be somebody in the city who's a kidnapper or a child abuser or something. Never give out your personal information. Never give out your address. Never give out your real name. Never, and
your location.
But he likes to play live video games. He don't like to play with the game, against the game.
Along the same discussion of why it's so underreported when it comes to young males. Again, they don't really realize that it's happening. And once it does happen, again, too often the boys are raised to think, well, if you're a man and you're supposed to be strong, you can fight these people off and you don't let nobody take advantage of you. This whole false sense of what a real man is and masculinity. So if it does happen, if they are exploited or they're victimized, that's embarrassing to go have to tell somebody, well, this happened to me, and they're looking at you like, well, why didn't you fight them off? If you were strong, you should have did this, you should have did that. We got to back away from that conversation.
Yeah.
And not only that, but acknowledging the fact that perpetrators can be women too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they groom.
Yeah. We do have some adult women that will take advantage of younger children, male or female.
All these teachers
yes, that's underreported. And again, that knock on the belt, if you got an older woman, oh, you big pimping now.
Right.
Older woman, no, that is exploitation.
See, and I can't go into specifics, but when I was nursing and I was working in the homeless clinic, I had a guy come in and he kind of told me his story on how he became hooked on drugs and how he became basically a teenage prostitute. Mm-hmm. And the story he told, let's just say this was a grown woman who worked in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And the story he told, I literally sat there and cried because I'm like, she played you every step of the way.
Yeah.
She fed into what you wanted, what she thought you wanted. Mm-hmm. And you didn't even second guess that this woman would do something like this to hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, most perpetrators or traffickers, pimps, whatever term that you want to assign to it, they know what these victims look like. And any type of void that a person presents with, that's what they're gonna zero in. Mm-hmm. Whether that is you're looking for love from some type of adult, whether you have some type of drug or alcohol addiction. And really a lot of drugs and alcohol are used with trafficking victims so that they're more resistant when exploitation occurs. So if I keep you doped up, you're not gonna fight this person off. You're not gonna resist what I'm having you engage in. Right. If they don't have a stable housing, they don't have a place to go to, they're living on the street. That's another way to kind of rope them in or to entice them. I'll give you a place to stay. Now that you're staying here, this is what you got to do in order to keep staying here. Mm-hmm. Think about the youth that identify as LGBTQ that are kind of, shunned away from their families. Their families have disowned them. They don't feel connected. They're just, so whatever the dynamic may be as to why they don't have a strong support system, that is an easy way to access those youth, because we know that a large percentage of homeless youth do identify with the LGBTQ community. So that think about those different vulnerabilities that allow perpetrators to have access to these youth. Speaking of homeless youth or youth that are runaway victims, for a youth that runs away that is on the street, within 48 hours of running away, they will be approached by a trafficker.
Wow. Within 48 hours?
48 hours.
Mm.
It happens very quickly. Like I said, it's easy to spot these victims. If you see a 12-year-old walking down the street at 10 o'clock at night, no coat on, they need some type of help.
Right. And I know some people, you know, our parents back in the day used to say stuff like, if you run away, go. You know, you ain't taking that with you. Everything in this house I own, go. If you want to go, go. But when you say things like that, you have to know that what you just said is really, that just shocked me. Within 48 hours, they might be approached by him or a trafficker.
Yes. It happens very quickly.
But I mean, you know for a fact, Grandma used to stop and she would pick these kids up off the street and throw them in the car with us, and we don't even know these people.
Yeah.
But she would she would stop and make them get in the car and take them home.
Yeah.
But
it's a different day and age now.
The way things are now, I can't do that with my kids. I can't take that risk with my children.
Right.
And or with myself. And it's a shame that, you know, my heart wants to do it, but in the climate that we're in today, you really can't do that now.
Yeah.
Or you go up with somebody's kid and they're going, oh, you took my kid and this and that. And it's like, well, hold on, lady. I saw your kid walking. I wanted to bring them home and make sure they were safe.
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished. So you have to be
exactly
right.
Well, I do want to open the chat up to, we've been going on for about an hour now. So I want to open the chat up to anybody who might have any questions or want to call in and talk to Shelia directly. The phone number is listed, 605-475-4074. Access code 753-359. That is the phone number. If you would like to ask her a personal question about the field that she's in, or ask her something regarding sexual trafficking or abuse within the African American community, either write it in the chat right now, or you can call the phone number that's listed on the screen if you want to talk to her. And while we're waiting to see if anybody has questions, I know somebody had hit me up earlier today.
And say while you're doing that.
Okay, go ahead.
If there is something that you need to report, please contact your local law enforcement, or what's the Center for Missing and Exploited Children?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we put that information in the make sure we put that in the description box of the video too.
So
I'll Google the number right now.
Okay, thank you.
Quit trying to say what I'm saying.
I know, I gotta pinch you.
You owe me a soda. I'm going there and grab one.
That's how we used to do as little. You gotta pinch the person if you say something at the same time.
You owe me a soda.
There's some pop in the fridge.
I know. Oh boy.
And good evening, everybody in the chat.
Yes, I'm sorry. We didn't want to interrupt.
Right.
We see you. Good evening. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this live and share this information with others.
Yes.
I have seriously had an eye-opening experience here. This has...
Yeah, I have heard a lot of stereotypical things about sex trafficking, which that Shelia, you know, was able to open our eyes to a lot of myths and a lot of speculations and a lot of stereotypical things that people perceive that goes on in sexual trafficking. But so everybody in the chat, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like the video, share the video out, share it on Facebook, IG, YouTube, Twitter, wherever. Share the video out. And you have a chance right now with Miss Shelia to ask her any questions in the chat. We're calling to the phone line. One of the questions somebody asked me, and it wasn't nothing pertaining to specifically that, but they were wondering, since you're from Omaha, I know you don't reside in Omaha anymore, but since you're from Omaha, do you know of any, like, if somebody wants to get into that field here and they got a little bit of background in that, you know, as far as like, do you have any leads in behavioral mental health field, like they said PRTF or YRTC, like this general area? Any companies or anything like that?
I'm sure I've been gone from Omaha about 16 years now, so it's been a while. I'm not familiar with all of the local agencies that are aiding this particular population, but I'm certain that they exist. I was kind of start Googling different social services agencies within law for human services, and just kind of initiate that search there.
Okay.
Or like try like Lutheran Family Services, Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to do foster care with them. I had signed up to do foster care.
Those would be the places I would start at.
There are several agencies. I just don't know all of them.
And I'm sure they will be able to give them a lead into where they should go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. Well, another question I wanted to ask, as far as, just like people who, the slogan, once a cheater, always a cheater. As far as being a pedophile or a child abuser, do you feel like people can honestly change? Like, let's say you have somebody in your family who's a predator or a child abuser or a rapist or something like that. And like, would you recommend keeping your children or loved ones away from that person forever? Like, I mean, seriously though, like.
No, I get what you're saying.
If somebody raped a kid 8-10 years ago, would you still be like, oh, you can't come to our house, oh, you can't be around our kids? Do you think that people can, what do you call it, get reformed? Rehabilitated?
I want to say that there's hope for everybody. I think that perpetrators of sexual abuse or pedophiles, the treatment is much more intensive and much more long-term. And it really would take a strong commitment by that person to say that, this is not something that I want to continuously engage in. I want to address this within me. So I do think if it's somebody that's truly committed to doing better and wanting better for themselves, it could happen, but it would not happen overnight.
Okay.
And as far as if you have somebody that was within the household, let's say it was a perpetrator and the victim was in the same household as the perpetrator, there's extensive counseling, extensive treatment that would need to occur before you should place those two individuals back into the same household. And again, that type of remediation does not happen overnight.
Right.
So that it would take very intensive treatment.
Okay. And what kind of treatments do they offer? Do you know about that?
There are an array of different treatment modalities or counseling that perpetrators can engage in. Again, that is not a population that I choose to work with just because of personal biases. So I wouldn't be able to work effectively with that population. So I'm not really well versed in what those specific treatments are for perpetrators or pedophiles, because that's not something that I personally have taken a liking to.
Okay.
Now, how do you
know that they do have treatment modalities, treatment programs, treatment centers that do specifically work with perpetrators? I do know that.
Now, real quick, before you ask your question, I don't want to cut her out, but I want to make sure I don't forget. As far as where you're going with that comment or that answer, is it in treatment, like in alcohol or drug abuse, or is it do they like have treatment locations where they keep them for 30, 90 days, or is it something where they just come once a week, or they come?
It varies.
They have both.
It varies. There are inpatient and outpatient programs.
Oh, okay.
That service that population.
Okay.
But it kind of sometimes it boils down to, are you being court ordered to go to this, meaning that somebody is forcing you to go, or are you voluntarily seeking this treatment because you want something better? Not to say that individuals that are court ordered can't achieve something from it, but I always look at, what is your motivation for change? Are you doing this voluntarily because you want it, or is somebody forcing you to do this?
Right. Okay.
But there are treatment centers, inpatient and outpatient, to service that population.
Okay. Go ahead, babe.
You sure?
You got the flow. You got.
No, I wanted to know, how do you go about rehabilitating someone who was sex trafficked or abused? How do you go about rehabilitating them into society, into not necessarily trusting other people, but not being so wary? Well, no, they should still be wary, but
the treatment process, and that's something that I'm spearheading with this program that we're launching here. Treatment is very slow, and it takes, again, that change isn't going to happen overnight. You kind of have to meet them where they are, where they present in their trauma timeline, where they present in their recovery. We know that these victims do not identify as victims. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of education, a lot of reframing their experiences, validating their experiences, and working with them to kind of undo some of the things that they have been made to believe are true. So it's a lot of undoing. That psychological coercion is very real. Manipulation is very real. The youth that we are working with, they believe that these traffickers are perpetrators. That's my man, that's my boyfriend, he wouldn't hurt me. That's just what we do. So it takes a lot of patience to kind of work with them and meet them where they're at, and start to develop stronger support systems, help them to identify what a healthy relationship is, help them to identify what their likes and wants are, and not the identity of whatever their trafficker has assigned to them. Okay. So it's a lot of educating, intensive treatment, a lot of counseling, helping them to identify healthy outlets, education on sex education, what are healthy sexual relationships. So it's very intensive. The progress is very slow because what is deemed, how you have relapses with drug and alcohol? Right. You have relapses within the recovery of trafficking victims, and relapses are defined as runaways. Oh. Because a lot of times once these youth are in our care or within our services, they will run away. And more times than not, they're running back to the trafficker. Oh. And it's not because they don't want help, but the help that they're receiving is very uncomfortable, it's very foreign. Mm. And so even though I know that this trafficking lifestyle is dangerous, I know that it can kill me, at least I know what to expect in that arena. I'm now in an arena where I don't know anybody. They're making me face all of these traumatic experiences that I've gone through. It's very uncomfortable, so I'm going to run back to what I know. Right. And so, we have to kind of keep that door open and not guilt them or make them feel bad about running away, because we know that it takes time to undo what has been forced upon them.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's good. That I'm glad that you mentioned that relapse, because I would have never known how a victim of trafficking would relapse. So yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. One thing that I did see in a article, as far as like porn, like a lot of people look at porn as, it's just something people do, sometimes couples do it sometimes, but some people don't always realize the danger or how dangerous porn can be, and that is not only harmful to those who watch it, or can be harmful to those who watch it, but it's also harmful to those who create. Like in most cases, the people who are creating these are forced, coerced, or frauded into having commercial sex on camera. So a lot of people look at these people on camera and on all these videos in these stores and just think that these people volunteered or signed up for a check to do that.
Yeah, that's very true. All of what you say is very true. Porn is a gateway into trafficking. And some trafficking victims may be forced to participate in pornographic materials or pornographic videos. So they breed each other. It's making money. Why else do people do porn? They do it to generate funds to make money off of it. So they're both, they kind of support each other.
Yeah, people have to realize that the videotape that you might be purchasing, from
that is being forced to do that. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And not only that, but acknowledging that people that have porn addictions, eventually you get to a point where watching it is not good enough. And so now, you know, you want more from that. Just like some people that, you know, are habitual marijuana smokers, eventually maybe marijuana is just not getting me high enough, so I need something stronger. Think about it along those same lines. So once the visual is not meeting that urge or that need, the next step is I'm going to go buy it or I'm going to go get it.
Right.
Physically. So it's kind of breeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I always try to highlight when I do these workshops, just so people can understand the seriousness of this, is that the lifespan for a child that is being trafficked is 7 years. And what I mean by that, say you have a 12-year-old who has been recruited into the lifestyle of trafficking. That 12-year-old's lifespan is 7 years if nobody intervenes. So by the age of 19, that 12-year-old will be dead.
Wow.
Because you have to think about the dangers of what is occurring in this lifestyle. You're thinking about exposure to violence, exposure to drugs, the exploitation, let's just call it what it is, that is rape. So when you have a 12-year-old who is being raped 10 or 15 times a day, eventually the chances of that person being killed or something worse happening or possibly suicide occurring is increased. So the lifespan for a victim is 7 years if nobody intervenes. If there's not any type of interventive services put into place, nobody has rescued them or recovered them from the trafficking lifestyle, the lifespan is 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And to me, that's very scary when you're talking about
very scary.
12 to 14, and then you have 7 years if nobody has stepped in to help.
That is very hard to
fathom, to swallow and absorb.
7 years. And when you first started talking, I thought you was going to say 7 years of them maybe keeping them,
right,
you know,
in that lifestyle.
I mean, but you're talking about like their lifespan.
Lifespan.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. And trafficking occurs in different forms. Be mindful of those massage parlors that have all of these weird names and bars on the window.
Yeah, with the happy endings.
Yes, those are, when you ask where does the trafficking occur, a large population, a large percentage, I should say, occurs within those massage parlors.
Really?
So that's something to be mindful of.
And that I used to hear of, but I thought that was like a stereotype.
Right, and like they kind of
people joke about it. Yeah, like you just go in there to get your massage.
Like, y'all, you're right.
I'm laughing because I know she's watching. Our cousin is sending me some funny text messages, Kiana. So I'm laughing at her text messages, but I will not repeat them.
Oh, wow.
Please don't.
But hello, Kiana. I'm glad that you're tuned in.
That is very interesting because I'm telling you, all the movies, all the comedy, the comics, all the comedians, you know, would joke about these parlors where you get massages and happy endings, but a lot of them really do get involved in that.
Yeah, and I guess think about, like I said, this is a workshop that I put on at different conferences. And one of the components that I talk about within the workshop is the influence of music and media on the minds of young children. Now, make no mistake, when I'm talking about this within the African American community, yes, I do focus on rap and hip hop to talk about the different examples and how that influences our youth. But there are influences across all genres of music. Let's just put that out there. It's not just a Black thing, and the message is just conveyed in different ways, if you will.
Right.
But when you really start to break down the lyrics of what is being stated in some of the music, we are glorifying this lifestyle. We are glorifying trafficking, pimps, hoes, this and that, the lifestyle, the drinking, the drugs, trap houses. That type of dialogue is being glorified. Now, it's not to say, I'm not sitting here talking about that I don't listen to this music, that I don't bob my head to it, because I do. But I'm viewing it and I'm hearing it from an adult mind.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how to separate entertainment from I'm incorporating this into my lifestyle. It's two different things. When you're talking about a vulnerable 12 or 13-year-old who, one, does not have a support system to educate differently that, some of this stuff can be dangerous, yes, fun and fine to look at, but you don't know what they had to do to get some of the things that you're seeing on the screen.
Right.
Or you're vulnerable and just looking for somebody to tell you that they love you. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you I love you, but then I'm gonna assault you or rape you on the back end of that.
Right.
But within the workshop, I kind of break down different, dialogues about certain songs. I talk about Big Pimpin' by Jay-Z, and that was my hit. That's still my jam.
Yeah.
But again, I'm an adult hearing that. But if you really break down the lyrics of what Bump B and Pimp C is talking about, they're talking about trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but when you really listen to that song, break down the lyrics, they're talking about it.
A lot of these rap songs that we grew up on was talking about giving women money, and receiving something in return. But when you listen to it, you just like, oh, I love the beat. I love the beat.
That's my song.
That's my jam. That's my song. Like Big Pimpin'. That was my song. But
Google the lyrics though and really break down what they're saying.
And I never really
break it down. Listen to it.
And I can tell you, I don't know the lyrics by heart, and probably listen to that song all the time.
Yeah. And it's not just, I'm not trying to zero in on specific artists. Again, this happens across all genres. But if we're talking about within the African American community, we have to acknowledge that, some of our biggest influencers are kind of perpetrating some of the things that we are trying to combat.
Right.
And so until you start having these healthy conversations to tell your kids, yeah, you can listen to it, but just know some of that is not for you.
Right.
It's going to be a problem if you don't have that level of intervention. And think about it, I'm not going to get too technical, but when you're talking about an adult mind versus a child's mind, the brain does not fully develop until the age of 21. That frontal cortex is not fully developed until the age of 21. Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking
about 25, but
it's 21. And the frontal cortex that controls your decision making, impulse control, things of that nature. So when you're looking at a 13 or 14-year-old, your brain isn't even developed enough to make some of the decisions, the proper decisions for some of the activities that you're engaging in.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of times people say, they're 16, they know better. Oh, they're 16, they know better. A lot of times they don't. They
don't know better. And when you talk about youth that are vulnerable, and you're talking about the influence of trauma, complex trauma, polyvictimization for youth that have been in repeated situations of physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, all of that are traumatic situations. Combine that with being trafficked, being raped multiple times, exposure to drug abuse. The level of trauma that you are encountered with or that you have had to endure, that can change the chemical composition of your brain.
Right.
And so combine those two things together where your brain has been changed or has developed, even the size of it can change based off of the trauma that you have had to endure. Combine that with it hasn't even fully developed. That's a bad situation.
Yeah.
Right. I know you go more in depth in your seminars and your workshops. Mm-hmm. Is there can they go on a website and watch them more in depth? Is there something?
Most of the conferences they're put on by different agencies, and so you have to pay to attend in person. PowerPoint presentations that I can share, but it wouldn't be me actually explaining it verbally. It just would be a PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
Yeah. But I would love the opportunity, if it's ever presented, to do a workshop once I'm back home visiting, or a community forum where we could just have a conversation about this.
Wow, that would be
more face to face. I would love to do something.
We can make that happen.
We can get that ball rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just when the time comes for you to come back home, just let us know in advance. And there's a lot of people that we can speak to.
Right, in the community.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. Because too often people are thinking, especially, well, that ain't happening in my house. That's down the street. No, it might have happened in your house. You might just didn't know about it. Or it could be happening next.
Road.
Yeah. too often you think it's not happening until it hits your doorstep, and by then it's too late.
Right, and I must say I said this before, but when the Me Too thing was going on, I was like, I am unfortunately a Me Too victim. And it didn't take, like, probably when I was 26, that's when I realized how many other people throughout my friendship, throughout my growing up, throughout my family, that I realized, what? Such and such did that to you? Or he did that to you too? Or who? What? It's like, ain't nobody locked up. And that's why when I had my children, who are both boys, and by the way, I never wanted to have girls because when I was younger, it was always more in my head that things happen to girls more than. So I always wanted boys, and so I got my 2 boys, and I'm like, yes, I got my 2 boys. Then as the years go on, and all these coaches and these in Pennsylvania, and all these you know, big name schools and stuff, and all these boys and softball teams, and I'm like, that's when I really start in on my boys. Like, every day, the coach, make sure if anything ever looks suspicious, let me know if anything's ever going on. It was like,
well, that's why
it was never talked about growing
over
up.
both my kids, my son and my daughter.
Yeah,
always been
overprotective.
They don't spend the night. I don't care if they family or not.
I'm like that mama bear that be like,
I'm very selective about who can babysit, where you can be, who can be over. I'm very, and I mean, even then I'm calling and like, hey, what's going on? Well, let me talk to so and so, because a lot, and you really wasn't around there, but I didn't really go out until my kids were old enough to tell me
to speak
and say, "Mommy, somebody touched me here," or somebody, did, or they said something, and it kind of seemed wrong. I wasn't going out, no, not till my kid can tell me this.
Yeah. But again, having those healthy conversations, it's not just strangers that you should be aware of, and having mutually agreeable decisions between males and females, and not just telling your young girls this is what you should do, but telling your boys something different. Exactly. It needs to be this a mutual conversation about sex and healthy relationships and how you treat each other, expectations, honoring your body, being owner of your agency, and being vocal if somebody violates that. It has to be a very mutual, agreeable conversation, because that's the only way that you're going to combat it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I've tried to keep those lines of communication open between me and my kids. I mean, from a very young age, even to now, to where I have an open door policy. I'm like, I don't care what time of day, what's going on,
or how bad it is.
Right, how bad. Come in, talk to me. Just tell me. Yeah. And I feel like I think I have a good relationship, because even my 17-year-old son, he'll just come in the room and just, so mom, blah blah blah, and he'll just start talking and telling me about his friends and this and that, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. And my daughter, something happened in her class where a young girl had gotten sick and they had to cut her hair off. She had a hat on. And the regular teacher knew what was going on, was understood. But then the music teacher came in, well, take your hat off. You need to take that hat off. And the girl is just kind of like freezing up, and she's getting scared, and she starts crying. And she pulls the hat off because the music teacher actually snatched it off her head. And my daughter's like, what are you doing? Bossy pants. What are you doing? And so the girl is crying. She puts the hat back on. The teacher goes, oh, I didn't know. So when my daughter got home and told me this, I'm pissed, because I'm like, why couldn't you have pulled that child to the side and asked instead of doing anything? That's like victimizing this child over again in front of everybody else.
Yeah. But keeping that line of communication open where they feel comfortable to come and talk to you.
And do something about it, because it's one thing to be like, oh, tell your kid, come to me. Oh, but we seen the pattern. I mean, I know what you're saying. we see the pattern throughout the years where things don't get handled. So when you tell your children, I'm there for you, I'll believe you, I'll ask questions later. I don't care if it's your father, your uncle, your brother, your favorite cousin. If something happens, when you tell that child to tell me, and you have to reinforce that. You have to go all the way with it, not just, oh, we're going to have a family, we're going to call the Rellos, and they're going to beat them up and, stomp them down, and you don't have to worry about it no more. No, you have to reinforce what you say, call the police, make the report, put their butts behind bars.
Yeah.
So they won't have the opportunity to do that to
somebody else. Yeah, because that's what happens. They move on to the next victim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we know
guys. Any other questions before we conclude?
I don't think so. I don't have any other questions, and I don't see any questions. It's been a lot of comments in the chat, but no questions. Yeah. So I do thank everybody for being, interactive in the chat. There's a lot of people who are making comments about some of the things that you were saying. But is there any last minute words that you want to say, Shelia, before you?
No, thank you guys for having this, this forum or this platform. We need to have more of these type of discussions.
Right.
Again, just, keep that line of communication open with your youth. Don't ever get to some point where you think that it couldn't happen to your family or somebody that you know, because the truth is anybody can be a victim. But just be vigilant, and keep that line of communication over and educate others. If you hear these myths, you hear these stereotypes, challenge it, address it,
All right. Well, thank you so much, little cousin, for coming on and educating us on things that we thought we knew.
Yeah, I honestly did.
We got a true education today, and I'll get in contact with you again once we talk to some people here about setting up a
or something. Okay.
Yeah. And but we really appreciate you coming on. We thank you. We know you gotta go. You got a day tomorrow, saving the world. Go ahead and put your cape on, girl.
All right, you guys. You have a good night. Thank you again.
You too.
All right. You have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for coming on tonight and giving us all this information, in-depth knowledge of sex trafficking within the African American community.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night. And everybody who's tuning in, please, again, make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell that you can receive all our future live notifications. I really thank you and appreciate it. And on that note, we're going to go out with our hood table song. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Be blessed. Have a wonderful, safe night, and a happy New Year.
You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable. Hop on YouTube, welcome to the hood table, where we chop up locally and globally, events vocally. You don't really wanna miss out on these conversations. Just really joke a little, laugh a little, get that wine in your system for your glass a little. Expose current events, talk trash a little. You never know, these opinions might clash a little. They addicted to the content, got them binge watching. You don't like it, then you want invited. Bet your friends watching in the house and your job parking lot before you clocking. They don't wanna miss a second, but it's HD content. Everybody think they got something to say, so it's an open invitation, bring it to the table. But if you come whack, just know we ain't buying in. We gon' probably turn you back until you sorry, try again. Yeah, welcome to the hood table. You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable. Yeah, welcome to the hood table. You don't need Netflix, you don't need cable.
Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope everybody is having a blessed and safe, happy New Year's thus far.
God bless.
Good night.